So this is a very short video on SA 620 using the work of auditors expert. All right. First of all, I need to spend some time with this word expert. What is the meaning of the word expert? Let us say that you are auditing X Limited and you are not understanding some paragraphs of standards on auditing. So you appoint me as a consultant for your audit team. And I give you the guidance how to apply that particular standard on auditing. Do you think I'm an expert? See, technically, yeah, in the practical world, I am, but not as per standards on auditing. No. When I talk about expert, means we are trying to use the work of an individual or an organization in a field other than accounting or auditing. That means, let us say you use my help for taxation purpose. You use my help for valuation purpose. You use my help for determining the legal impact, all right, of a legal case. You use my help for, let us say, understanding the work in progress, percentage completion of a project or of some goods. All right. Now, these are the areas where we say that we are using the work of an expert. So that is the first thing that you need to understand, that when we talk about using the work of an expert, you are using the work either of an individual or organization for a field other than accounting and auditing. All right. For a field other than accounting and auditing, remember that thing. All right. Don't get too much confused. Just that when you're using someone's work for purely for accounts and audit, that means you're taking consultancy. All right. And we will not say that you're using the work of an expert. Now that is covered in SA 220. All right. Taking some consultation. All right. Okay. Now the expert that you're using, for your audit. Now that can be a management expert appointed by management. But whenever you get questions on management expert, that is where you have to give a reference of SA 500, and then auditors expert SA 620. Auditor expert can be further divided into two: auditors internal expert, that means either an employee or partner of the auditor, or auditors external expert, that means an outside professional engaged by the auditor. But remember one thing, SA 620 is not using the work of expert, it is using the work of auditors expert. That means it is dealing only with this. When you get a question on using the work of management's expert, that means you have to write the answer from SA 500. All right. So we have understood one thing: this essay does not deal with, if you have appointed someone with your audit team who is a specialized person in accounts and auditing, so this essay does not deal with that. And this essay does not deal with, which essay 620 does not deal with management's expert. All right. Remember one thing, in the whole SA 600 series, when you're using the work performed by others, obviously you are the one who are finally responsible for your audit opinion expressed. But when we talk about using the work of expert, we are appointing expert in such areas where we don't have expertise, right? All right. So in that case, if you have used the work of expert and if you have performed the procedures as per SA 620, that means you have taken some skill, care, and caution. You have not blindly relied upon that expert. After that, if the expert's opinion is faulty, then you won't be held responsible. Don't worry about it. And that is what is given over here in this particular paragraph. All right. Okay. So what are the important questions when it comes to SA 620? I'll just quickly take you through that. All right. The notes and points are very much clearly sorted. If expertise in a field other than accounting or auditing is necessary, then auditor may determine whether he wants to use the work of an expert. And examples I told you: valuation, legal case. All right. Then taxation. All of these are examples. Then an auditor expert may be needed to assist the auditor in one or more of the following areas. Now, what are the areas where you may need an auditor's expert? That is what is being discussed over here. All right. You may need an expert while understanding the systems of the entity, or you may need the expert while for test of controls or test of details. All right. Or you may need an expert for investigation in a particular area. So that is what they have given over here. All right. Okay. Working papers: if expert is a part of your audit team member, then in that case his working papers are your working papers. But if expert is not a part of your team member, and if it's an external expert that you have appointed, then in that case you have to ensure that in the agreement that you have signed with that expert, you have taken the consent of that expert. Only then those working papers you can access. All right. So look at this: subject to any agreement to the contrary, auditors external experts working papers are their own and do not form part of audit documentation. So if you want the auditor's external expert working papers to form a part of your documentation, you need an agreement from them in writing. All right. Okay. Then the important points that they can ask in the question, one of their favorite question is this: all right, I'm an auditor, I'm going to use the work of auditor's expert. Now, even after appointing him, how much I need to still coordinate with him? Will my headache reduce, or I need to increase my coordination? So the nature, timing, and extent of my procedures will depend upon which factors? All right. One of their favorite, obviously it will depend upon the basic two things: that it should click automatically even if I don't teach, will depend upon, yes, the competence, capabilities of the expert, and the nature of the matter to which that expert relates. How significant is that matter? What is the risk involved in that matter? All right. How important is that expert in the current period audit? What is your past experience with the expert? So the point, they just flow, points just flow in this particular answer. You can read it once and automatically you'll be able to write. Don't worry about it. Next, when management has used management expert, what are the factors that will help you in deciding whether you want to appoint a separate expert for that particular area, whether you want to appoint an auditor's expert or not? Obviously, the competence of that management expert. Then whether the scope of that expert was relevant for you or not, whether there were restrictions on the work of that expert because it was appointed by the management, he worked as per the instructions of the management. All right. Whether that expert was using some technical standards, all right, in performing his work, or whether you have a doubt over the objectivity or independence of that expert. In that case, you may appoint an auditor's expert. So you can just quickly go through these points. All right. And you can write on your own. Also not a problem at all. Next, when you're appointing an expert, what are the factors that will indicate that you need to perform more procedures? All right. Obviously, if the matter is subjective, complex, if there is no prior experience with the expert, if the expert is an outsider and not a part of our firm's policies, then in that case, you'll have to perform more procedures. All right. Next, you are worried about the CCO of the expert. How can you evaluate the CCO of the expert? The competence, capability, objectivity of expert may come from variety of sources. So what are those sources that can help you to evaluate the CCO of the expert? All right. You have to conduct inquiries. You have to see what are the interest of that expert in that entity. You have to ask management also whether they have any relationship with the expert. You can take a declaration from that expert. All right. Look at this. So regarding objectivity, competence, capabilities, whether if that expert's research paper has been published somewhere else, all right, or he has written some book. Okay. So through that also you can come to know what are the past assignments that he has handled. So these are the sources from which you can come to know the information. Then this is a very basic question. Aspects of auditors experts field relevant to auditors understanding. So as an auditor, I need to understand the experts field, right? Okay. So what are the aspects that will be useful for me? I want to know whether experts field, whatever work has been given to that expert, whether he has the specialty in such areas which will be helpful for me in audit, whether it will be relevant for me in audit. All right. Then when I'm trying to understand the knowledge of the expert and his field, I want to know that whether he is subject to some kind of professional or some other standards, like actuary are subject to actuarial standards. All right. Then I want to know about whether he's using some standard assumptions, methods and stuff, normally how much assumptions and methods are involved in his work. All right. Then I want to know what kind of data he's using. So I want to know his relevance. I want to know whether he is using some standards. I want to know his assumptions and methods. And I want to know what kind of data he is using. Yes. So a very boring kind of question if this particular question is asked. Now, one of their favorite is this one. When you're appointing an external expert, you may feel the need of an agreement. All right. So what are the contents of that agreement? And why do you feel the need that there should be a detailed agreement with that external expert? Contents of the agreement, what will be his work, so nature, scope, objective. All right. Then what will be his responsibility? What will be expert's responsibility? What kind of communication will be required, report, certificate, etc. Then, all right, I need to tell the expert to maintain confidentiality. So then this is the what part and this is the why part. Why do you need a detailed agreement? All right. Why do I need a detailed agreement? Because you will have access to sensitive confidential information. I don't want any misunderstanding. Why do you need an agreement? I want everything to be clear. If there are multiple laws, regulations, and highly complex matters, I want everything to be clear. All right. And most probably if I haven't used his past work, then I will need a detailed agreement. All right. So these are two separate questions that can be asked in exams. One of the favorite questions, whenever there's a case study that you are using the work of an expert, how will you evaluate the adequacy of that expert's work? All right. Then we are worried about RR, relevance and reasonableness, whether his work is logical, reliable. All right. And whether his evidence, whatever are his findings, are consistent with other audit evidence. Maybe we can tally the work of that expert and management expert and see the consistency. Then what kind of assumptions, methods he has used, whether it is relevant, reasonable or not, and whatever data he has used, whether that is relevant, complete and accurate. Complete, accurate and relevant data. So one point is on his findings, conclusions, all right, whether it is relevant, reasonable or not, whether his assumptions, methods are relevant, reasonable or not, and then the data that is using of that data, completeness, accuracy, relevance of that data. And for each point, there can be a separate question which you can expand on your own, and that I've given it in this notes. Reference to auditor's expert in auditor's report. Can I write the name of the expert in my report? All right. See, general rule. No. You cannot write the name of the expert in your report. All right. Exceptions. Two exceptions. One, if it is required by law. For example, in insurance audit report, we need to state the work done by actuaries and actual calculation of liabilities. So if it is required by law, then we'll have to give the reference. Second, even if it is not required by law, but if you have given a modified opinion, which is relevant to the expert's work. For example, I appointed expert for WIP work in progress, and he told me that only 20% work is completed, whereas management is saying that 80% work is completed. All right. And for that, I gave a modified opinion, and the work relates to that expert. Correct. Then after obtaining consent of that expert, if I obtain consent of that expert, because I'm going to write someone's name, I cannot write it without consent. Then in that case, I may give a reference to auditor's expert in auditor's report if I want to. No one is asking you to do it compulsorily. But if reference is required by law, then in that case, you must provide the reference. All right. Yes, sir. So that is it. My short revision video on SA 620 using the work of auditor's expert. Now, if you go through these notes twice, I think you will be done with SA 620. Thank you so much.